Genau.
Sehr herzlich begrüße ich heute in unserer Mitte.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Ms. Obermayer, the president of the Obermayer Foundation, and her sons Joel and Henry. Welcome to Berlin. Ms. Franklin, members of the jury, a special thanks goes to and a welcome goes to the prize winners and our friend Ms. Friedlander, the winner of the Distinguished Service Award, and the mayor of Hamm, Sieg. I would also like to welcome the awardees of the past years, members of the diplomatic corps, members of the Jewish community. I'm very pleased indeed that Mr. Königshaus, the president of the German-Israeli Society, is here tonight. And on behalf of the Senate, I'd like to welcome Dr. Behrendt, the Senator for Justice. Deputy Speaker Ms. Seidel, members of the Bundestag of the Berlin House of Representatives, city elders, guests from abroad and from Germany. Awardees, once again, welcome to Berlin. I'm delighted to have you as our guest tonight at the Berlin House of Representatives. For our city, your visit is an honor. You've made an outstanding contribution to preserving the memory of our Jewish past. And today you are bringing these stories to our parliament. This is a great enrichment. Today I would like to start my speech by looking back on a historic letter, a letter that decreed the suspension of humanity in Germany. In the night of November 9th to November 10th, 1938, Reinhard Heydrich, chief of the Reich Security Main Office, issued an order on the proceedings of the Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, and I quote, "Whatever actions occurred should not endanger German life or property." The telegram reads, which was sent to the Gestapo and the SD officers that night. And then, in commercial streets, particular care is to be taken that non-Jewish businesses are completely protected against, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, this year is a special one in the commemorations of Kristallnacht. November 2018 marks the 80th anniversary of the moment when the Nazis showed their true colors. Synagogues burned, Jewish businesses were destroyed, people deported and murdered. And as we learned from the letter by Heydrich, these actions were executed on an official order. That night was the official authorization of a genocide. That night, if not even before, anti-Semitism and murder became the official doctrine. The Jewish girl Salomia Jenin experienced Kristallnacht in Berlin as a 6-year-old. Last year, she described her memories to the German radio channel Deutschlandradio Kultur, and I quote, "I started to realize that something wasn't right. We were sitting in our living room, facing onto the streets, and then we heard sounds of boots running and screams. And then our doorbell rang. There were 2 other Jewish families living in our house. And there, at the door, was the father of one of those families who warned us, 'Do not leave the house today.' He said 300 Jews had been cooped into the synagogue in Oranienburger Straße and they would put fire to it. Of course, I heard this, how he told my mother. Later it turned out to be a rumor. It did not happen, but I can well recall it. The next morning, my big sister and I, my mother, went out to the streets and I had to make my way amidst the pieces of glass. Half of Berlin's population was on the streets. They went to see what had happened the night before. The atmosphere was menacing, unquote. After all those decades, illustrations like this one by Salomia Genin, and also looking at documents like the one by Reinhard Heydrich, are still painful. But it also shows us what the German Jewish History Award stands for. History is kept alive by contemporary witnesses, by people who can tell their stories. Therefore, I'm all the more pleased, Margot Friedländer, to have you here tonight, and that you will be presented with the German Jewish History Award's Distinguished Services Award. I'm very moved by your story and the cruel fate of your family, and I think it is remarkable that you can still muster the strength to go on and tell your stories, especially to the young generation. The more time passes, ladies and gentlemen, the fewer contemporary witnesses there are left to speak. It is all the more important to research and document their stories. History is also kept alive by looking at documents like this letter and coming and discussing them. Today, Kristallnacht, a vast amount of research has been done on Kristallnacht, but this is not the case for all events surrounding the Holocaust and all facets of Jewish life in Germany. And this is where you, awardees, come into play. You've established your very own personal access to history, and you found ways to present the knowledge you acquired. You have asked questions. What happened back then? What happened in my immediate surroundings? What happened in my neighborhood, before my own front door? You set out to seek answers, sought contact to contemporary witnesses, contacted surviving family members and descendants, and evaluated documents. You looked into the smaller individual stories, those nobody knows about yet. You looked in places where nobody looked before. You have shown that every story counts. You made people known who were unknown before, rendered the stories of German Jews tangible and concrete. And you did so not just for yourselves, but for others. By doing so, you contributed to our historic understanding. You used your possibility, the possibilities of a generation who is not responsible for the Holocaust. And at times like these, you are helping to ensure that we are taking a clear stand against anti-Semitism. And in the spirit of late Arthur Obermayer, you send a clear message against hatred with your historic work. Your distinction means a lot to me and the House of Representatives. Every January, we commemorate the liberation of Auschwitz on January 27th, 1945, here in Parliament. The Youth Forum Memorial and the presentation of the German Jewish History Awards have become an important tradition for our House. And we've adopted a resolution recently here against anti-Semitism. The Berlin House of Representatives takes a very clear stand against anti-Semitism and the discrimination against Jews. Reflecting on our values of democracy and freedom shall guide us in our parliamentary business and always be part of it. All members of Parliament must place these values above their parliamentary business at all times. Freely elected parliaments have not always been a matter of course in Germany, and we must not forget that. Awardees, I would like to thank you for reminding us of a part of the long-standing Jewish history in Germany. Your work and your enthusiasm for these issues merit the German Jewish History Award. I congratulate you on your distinction on behalf of all the members of the Berlin House of Representatives. I hope that this evening makes you proud, because you have every reason to be. My thanks also go to the Obermayer Foundation, who once again made it possible to present the award. People who ask themselves questions about history, who study history, contribute to our social self-assurance about what was, what shouldn't have been, and what should guide us in the future. We must keep that in mind today and in the future. And this is exactly what the German Jewish History Awards stand for. Thank you.
Two years ago, only days after the death of my father, Arthur, the founder of this award, I spoke here. A couple days ago, I imagined asking him what I should say today. He reminded me that the most important thing is to honor the people doing the work, the people receiving the award today. Today, I want to thank this year's awardees for what they've done, for what you are still doing. Among you are the oldest person who has ever received the award, Margot Friedländer, and some of the youngest from the Josef-Gruppe, who have in turn brought even younger people with them, high school students from the Evangelisches Gymnasium zum Grauen Kloster, doing similar work. You are doing work to connect the past to the present. You bring the past to life, making history meaningful for people. We also have over 30 former awardees here today. I want to thank you too. All of you are still engaged in related work. The work you do connects people together who find meaning from the same shared history. The work you are all doing is changing, though. As young people are getting involved in this work, they are bringing with them much-needed new perspectives. With the death of Arthur, a new generation with different perspectives has taken on the leadership of the Obermayer Foundation. Most significantly, though, there are fewer and fewer people, whether Jewish or Christian, whether in Germany or scattered around the world. There are fewer and fewer people alive who lived in pre-war Germany. These are the people who can best tell the stories, and they're not here, or very few of them are left. Children have no one remaining in their families sometimes who remember anything about that era. Because of all this, the Obermayer Foundation is trying new things. Yesterday, we gathered close to half of all living awardees to meet, to talk together for the first time with a focus on how to build for the future. We had a small meeting also for the first time, including most of the officers of the Obermayer Foundation and the jury of the award, also to talk about the future. While there were many specifics, there was one theme that was not discussed very much, but was in the background of many conversations. Immigrants, immigration. How do we connect the story of Jewish people to the story of immigrants into Germany today? The work being done could only happen because Jewish people, those who survived, were driven from their homes. Jews became migrants, needing to find new homes, and eventually take on new national identities. This isn't really new. Jewish identity and culture are rooted in stories of migration, whether ancient stories from the Bible or recent history in this case. While this is the Jewish story, migration itself is also the story of all humanity, moving from one place to another, joining those already living there. Migration is currently increasing across the planet, partly in response to war and climate change. And Jewish tradition tells us very clearly how to treat these strangers arriving in our home. It says not to oppress them. It says to treat them as citizens. And it says to love them, all for the same reason. It says this in the Torah in multiple places, and it says to do this, there's one reason it gives repeatedly, because you were strangers in the land of Egypt, the story of Exodus. It reminds us of something very, very simple: empathy, specifically for strangers, for immigrants, but empathy. And empathy, or caring, doesn't always come easily. You here who are receiving the award, you are the ones who know how to connect people, help people in your region find personal connections to local history. You know what makes it matter to people. You know what makes them care. You're the ones learning how to make this history meaningful and how to apply it to the challenges of today. Ich danke Ihnen für was Sie machen.
Thank you, President Wieland, for your meaningful introduction, and thank you for your continuing support of the Obermayer German Jewish History Awards. When the restored synagogue of Niederzitzen opened in March 2012, with many descendants of the former Jewish community in attendance, the town's mayor, Richard Kuhler, addressed those at the ceremony with regard to bringing the project to life and the work of our awardee, Brunhilde Stürmer, and her colleagues. He said, "Some just hoped, only a few believed. A large number of people thought the hopers and believers were crazy. But the village council trusted the idea, and the result proves them correct. And it is a pleasure to all of us." Those poetic words are a tribute to Mrs. Stürmer, and all surely can be applied to our awardees tonight. Little could Arthur Obermayer have known in the year 2000, when the awards were established, that his dedication to bring honor to individuals who have raised awareness of a once vibrant Jewish history and culture in their communities would have such a profound impact on the lives of so many. We remember Arthur with respect and with great fondness. Tonight marks the 18th year of the awards and the 5th year we are presenting Distinguished Service Awards. There could be no greater tribute to Arthur than the extraordinary passion with which his family has invoked to continue and enrich so many aspects of the program this year. We thank Dr. Judith Obermayer, Arthur's wife, and president of the Obermayer Foundation, sons Joel and Hank, and daughter Marjorie Raven. Among the new initiatives this year, we have begun an extensive strategic planning process involving the foundation, jury, awardees, and co-sponsors. We established the first pre-award forum that you heard about from Hank, and this year we had participants from the year 2000 to the awardees this year. They exchanged information about their work, ideas for cooperation, and suggestions for the future of the awards program. We are grateful for the devoted leadership of Krista Nicholson, who worked tirelessly with the assistance of Dr. Klaus Dieter Emke to organize the event. I would now ask that all of the awardees from every year present tonight stand to be recognized. Would all of the awardees please rise? Everyone, please stand. And up in the balcony, too. In the coming year, we will identify and meet with potential partners who might be interested in and positioned to create awards programs that recognize the work of individuals preserving Jewish history and culture in countries throughout Europe. Tonight, we honor recipients of the 2018 awards and hear from each of them about their work, with visuals projected onto the screens so we can learn about their activities. But first, we acknowledge with the expert support of the protocol office here, headed by Karen Brandis and Sabina Hahn. Where are you? Could you rise to be acknowledged? Karen, please. Sabina? Thank you. And we thank the jury who reviewed the nominations, and I ask you all to rise when I announce your names, but please do not applaud until the end of the announcement. Of course, we acknowledge President Wieland and also the following jurors. In addition, they are Hank Obermayer, who represents the family, Arthur's son, also Dr. Sarah Nahama, the executive founding director of Berlin branch of Touro College, who played a seminal role in the original implementation of the awards. Dr. Frank Mecklenburg, the chief archivist and director of research at the Leo Baeck Institute, and Dr. Hanno Löwe, director of the Jewish Museum in Hohenems, Austria, and immediate past president of the Association of European Jewish Museums. Thank you. We also acknowledge Professor Dr. Rabbi David Ellenson, who could not be here tonight. Professor Ellenson is former president and now Chancellor Emeritus of the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion and director of the Schusterman Center for Israel Studies at Brandeis University. We also welcome Dr. William Weitzer, Executive Director of the Leo Baeck Institute, which is a co-sponsor of the awards program. Dr. Weitzer? The other co-sponsor of the award, in addition to the Berlin Parliament, is JURSIG, an online genealogy organization that's part of Jewish Gen. And the JURSIG discussion group is the main source of information for potential nominators of the award and also gives the awardees a platform to discuss their work. And finally, I would like to thank Betty Solbior, our coordinator, United States coordinator and program manager, who has overseen the nomination process since the inception of the awards. Betty, could you please rise? And now we have the presentation of the awards. President Wieland, I think. Do we have something else first? No? Yes? Something more first? There's something first? Sorry? Yes? Carl and Hannah Fritz, could you come forward, please? And I think... So you come forward. Yes, and do it.
The village we are from, Obermayer, is part of the city of Kehl, part of the German-French Eurodistrict of Strasbourg. We come from a relatively small village, and most of the services here are voluntary services, and that is also true for our work. The Jews of Obermayer were typical representatives of what we call rural Jewish life. This is the rather humble synagogue of the Jewish community, with a separate building with the mikveh. At first, the Jewish citizens were second-class citizens with limited rights. They typically made their living by trading with goods required by the rural population. And usually they were also active in the itinerant trade. The share of Jews in the total population of our village, around 1875, stood at about 10%, which meant that for a long time, one of the three village teachers would be a Jewish teacher. After the Jews were given the same rights, many Jews went to the biggest cities, for example, to Kiel, but also to Karlsruhe or Mannheim. In 1983, the town council of Obermayer decided to publish the village history. And I was aware of the fact that we could not write down the history of our village without also including the history of the Jewish community. Together with my friend Hans Nussbaum, I faced this challenge. Hans Nussbaum's sister-in-law, Ulrike Nussbaum, immersed herself into the archives. Hans and I interviewed witnesses of that time, Jewish inhabitants, many of them today abroad, and villagers. In 1984, the Village Chronicles were published. For the first time, people could read up on the history of the Jewish community. To our surprise, there was great media coverage on our article. We were particularly impressed with the critical analysis in the Jewish weekly Allgemeine Jüdische Wochenzeitung. Our research and the publication meant that the town council decided to install a memorial with all the names of the Jewish people from the village who had died during the time of Nazi Germany. That was the starting point for further investigations and encounters that until today have resulted in new results and experiences. We are particularly touched by the fact that trust has been reinstalled and that new friendships have been forged across country borders. Friendships with survivors of the Holocaust and their descendants. We were delighted that the survivors forged new contacts with people in their old home. This, in the picture, for example, is Julius Kaufmann, who became an honorary member of his old football club after so many years. We ourselves went to visit Jewish former members of the Jewish community in New York, Jerusalem, and France. In New York, we met with Ludwig Merklinger, who was also part of the football club, who told us, "You brought my hometown closer to my heart again." In 2005, we participated with my primary school class in an ecumenical youth project to commemorate the deportation of Jews from Baden to the internment camp in Gurs in France in October 1940. This deportation was the first mass deportation of German Jews from the German territory. Together with the children aged 10 years old, we designed two equal memorials. One was located in the center of the village between the town hall and the church, and the other in Neckarzimmern in the central memorial at the central memorial site. In 2008, we published a second book after Denise Kaufmann from Toulouse shared her recollections with us. Denise, her husband Julius, and his mother had survived in France. And as the title, we selected a quote by Julius Kaufmann. "We were lucky, outstandingly lucky." In 2012, we transcribed Jewish registries, which was particularly important for family research and ancestry research by the descendants. In 2001, we received original letters written by Martha Bodenmayer, née Meyer, from a Jewish estate. She was murdered in 1942 in the concentration camp of Auschwitz, but had been interned at the camp at Gurs first. In 2015, Martha's granddaughter, Lisa Richards from California, found out using the internet and our publication that her dad, Günther Jakob Bodenheimer, was from Bodersweier near Kehl and not near Kiel. At the age of 6, Günther Jakob Bodenheimer was deported together with his mother Martha to the concentration camp in Gurs, but was helped by the French Jewish humanitarian organization OSE and escaped to the United States. His daughter Lisa came to Bodersweier in 2015. She made new friends. Some of her new friends later sent her the old children's bed of her father Günther that had remained in Bodersweier after 1940. They sent it to her to California, and she's with us today. Bodersweier was also the hometown of the large Benzinger family. In May 2017, Schlumit Prota and her daughter Daphne Joffe helped us lay the Stolpersteine memorial stones for their descendants, for their ancestors, In Bodersweier, we organized a meeting of many family members of the Benzinger family. Some of them had not known each other before. They met with villagers from Bodersweier and Kehl. This is the memorial that was the result of the ecumenical youth project Mahnmal. It symbolizes the shape of a Star of David in front of the coat of arms of the community of Bodersweier to symbolize the extermination of the Jewish community of Bodersweier. It will always help us commemorate the Jewish community and the people in the Jewish community of Bodersweier. For over 3 decades, we have lived relations with surviving youth and their descendants. we have been working with children and youths to live up to this task. We would like to thank the Obermayer family and the jury for awarding us the German Jewish History Award. We would like to thank all the people in Bodersweier and Kiel who have supported us for many years. We would like to thank our Jewish friends in the United States, in France, in Israel. Some of them are here with us today. We would like to thank you for your trust and for this sign of your recognition and friendship. Thank you for nominating us for this award.
Die Josef-Gruppe.
Thank you very much, above all, to the family Obermayer and the jury. We're very grateful indeed to be here tonight. My name is Pia Sösemann. I'm one member of the so-called Joseph Group. Dorothea Ludwig, Fabian Herbst, Simon Warnach and Simon Strauss are also members, and Albrecht Hoppe, our patron, so to speak. Our project goes back to the year 2004. We were ninth graders at the Evangelical Gymnasium, the Grey Monastery. We went to visit a synagogue within our religious education, and we met Rolf Joseph. He told us his story and how he survived the Holocaust. His story moved us so much that we decided spontaneously to write his story down, to document it and to pass it on. Throughout the next 4 years, we met regularly, we got to know him better, wrote down his story, and in the year 2017 we finally published the booklet I Must Go On, the story of Mr. Joseph. 1 year later, in 2008, the publication was in 2007, we graduated from high school and we left Berlin. But we always came back. And whenever we came back, we also met Mr. Joseph, whom we had a very friendly, almost family-like relation. Mr. Joseph died in 2012. We met again at his funeral in Berlin. We decided that we don't want to just document his story, but actively hand it on, pass it on. So we decided to found the Rolf Joseph Prize. Thanks to the help of our former religion teacher, Mr. Hoppe, who functioned as a patron. The prize is targeted as pupils between 8th and 11th grades and focuses on Jewish traditions and culture in the past and today, and students can submit different kinds of proposals. The prize was awarded for the first time in 2015 in the meeting center in a meeting center in Brandenburg, and since last year it's presented in the Jewish Museum Berlin. And we will now hear about the two projects of the last 2 years. This is the story of family Lipski. Adolf Lipski was born in 1875, his wife Nanny in 1888. They had 3 children. The oldest child, Helmut, was born in 1911. His sister, Tova, was born in 1940. She later changed her name to Sheila. Gerda, the youngest child, was born in 1990. The family lived in Turan, a small city in today's Poland. They owned a very large estate there because they were very wealthy. They even had a housemaid. They earned their money with a sawmill. They were an Orthodox Jewish family. The father, Adolf, fought during World War I for the German army. He was wounded by a grenade. This left him deaf on one ear for the rest of his life. After World War I, Germany had to give the city Turan back to Poland. For a short period of time, it wasn't clear what would happen. The family faced the decision whether they wanted to remain in Poland or emigrate to Germany. For Adolf and Nanny, there was not a doubt. They left everything behind and moved to Berlin with their children. When they arrived in Berlin, they lived in poverty. Because of the housing shortage, the family had to split up and live in separate flats. Only 2.5 years later, they were able to be rejoined and move together into one small flat. After Tova had finished primary school, she went to a commercial college. She was unable, however, to graduate because of the Nuremberg laws had come into effect. Later, Tova joined a Zionist movement in Leipzig, where she had moved. This enabled her to emigrate to Israel in 1933. She did so against the will of her parents. Because he had served in World War I for Germany, Adolf felt German and didn't want to leave the country. It was also not an option because of his strict faith. But then Adolf, Nanny, Helmut and Gerda were brought to the Warsaw Ghetto. Gerda managed to flee to the Netherlands, but when German forces occupied the country, she was handed over to the Nazis and brought to the extermination camp Treblinka. Adolf fell ill at the Warsaw Ghetto and died. Nanny was brought to Treblinka and murdered. Helmut was deported to Auschwitz and killed there.
Dieses Drama Live.
This Draw My Life looks into the life of the Jewish family Lipsi during the times of Nazi Germany. It was established within the framework of the placing of stumbling blocks, Stolpersteine, of Adolf, Nanny, Helmut, Gerda Lipski in Salzburgstrasse in Berlin, where the family used to live. Tuba Lipski, who had emigrated to Israel on the Zionist movement, survived. This was why we had the chance within this wonderful project to meet her granddaughter and have a very intriguing conversation with her, because she had traveled to Berlin with all of her family to witness the installation of the Stolpersteine. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the family Obermayer, Margot Friedlander, there's a children's book that I'm very fond of and that I read regularly in Defiance and when I need consolation. It's called Matti and his grandfather. It's about a grandfather who is dying and a grandson who stands at his deathbed, and he recalls the many walks along a riverbed and the many things he had learned from him on their joint walks. In his imagination, they have one more walk, and Matti is so carried away by the story his grandfather tells that his grandfather gets smaller and smaller, but he doesn't notice, and suddenly he disappears. The grandfather dies, everybody cries, but only Matti has a smile on his face, because he knows he will never lose him. He would just have to think of him, about his gait and their strolls, and once again they're walking again. The river of forgetfulness is down there, Lethe, as the ancient Greeks call it, but here on earth, on the riverbank, the memory prevails. Our grandfather too died, ladies and gentlemen. A few years ago, we lay stones on the grave, on the tomb of Rolf Josef. We, his grandchildren in spirit, we, the Rolf Josef group, who formed, united to carry on his story and to learn from it, to teach others about it, and to protect ourselves against frivolous speech about the most dreadful thing, the decreed murder, the extermination of an entire part of humanity. The stories Rolf Josef told us, the injustices suffered, despair, humiliation, have left their mark on me, and they made clear that only remembering the walk with him along the riverbank will protect us against oblivion. When you look into Holocaust, there are no easy words, no conscience sparing. You have to surrender yourself time and again. No lesson, no class, no Hollywood production will ever give us the feeling to have dealt with the topic sufficiently. And if you have known somebody well, like Rolf Josef, you know that there's much more to tell. There are many more fates in Germany that are still waiting to be uncovered. Therefore, we want to present Rolf Josef to the next generation, make them their great-grandchildren in a way. The school competition we founded, and which is for the first time this year carried out in cooperation with the Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung daily newspaper, looks into Jewish life. We are looking forward to contributions of all kinds, documentaries, dances, interviews with contemporary witnesses. They have to fulfill only one criteria: to be honest. And Mr. Joseph should have liked them. The submissions, the proposals will be printed in the FAZ, the paper, or shown on their website. We hope that many schools learn about our prize, that there will be many, many committed teachers who motivate their pupils, and that in June we'll have a wide range of submitted proposals, stories that are waiting to be told. Ladies and gentlemen, those who live on in our memories will never die. Mr. Joseph is alive for us. He's a compass. He points into the right direction for us. He saves us from inertia, from thoughtlessness, from ignorance. With him, we take a walk along the bank of the river, and we're happy about company. Thanks to the award we will be presented today, we will have an increased number of people who join us along our walk. Many thanks.
Harald Roth und Volker Mall.
Guten Abend.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We started our research 15 years ago, and back then we knew that in Heilfingen-Teilfingen, in the Böbingen-Tübingen area, there used to be a concentration camp, an outpost of the concentration camp at Natzweiler Struthof. The members of the community, the municipality, called it a work camp. We, however, did not know the names of the prisoners. In the cemetery of Tailfingen, there was a wooden cross, but no mention of how these prisoners had died. Our research brought us to the Nattweiler number book, which lists the names of the 600 Jewish prisoners. So here you can see a snapshot of those records. So this number book was the basis on which we based our inquiries. We got in touch with survivors, and numbers turned into names. Some names turned into faces. Mordechai Chekhanova, who is from Israel, was the first one to come and visit us in 2005. We recorded the survivors' testimonies. This has been done, for example, by the Shoah Foundation, their videos. We are very grateful to them. With their help, we were able to reconstruct some of the living and working conditions. In 2012, we opened to the public a documentation center. The permanent exhibition at the center is conceived in a way to address and appeal to young people in particular. Survivors tell them about their everyday life in the camp, their suffering, and the time after liberation. But also for the survivors, the documentation center is an important place. Here, they can come to terms, though it's painful, with their own past. A past which will remain until the end of their life, part of their present as well. Here in the picture, you can see Sam Baron, together with his brother Berko and his father Isaac in Tailfingen. Salomon Abramowitz, who called himself Sam Baron after the liberation, lost his dad at the camp. Isaac Abramowitz was buried in a mass grave and in June 1945, ordered by the French occupants, moved to the cemetery of Tailfingen. For Sam Baron, despite his severe sickness, it was of particular importance to install a personal gravestone for his dad on his dad's tomb. This picture from 2013 shows him together with his wife Tova, his son Eric, and granddaughter Elise. In June 2010, we opened a memorial designed by the artist Rudolf Kurz. It's a pyramid made from aluminium, the tip of the iceberg, and engraved in it are the names of the 601 Jewish prisoners. It only gives their names, not in alphabetic order, the dead and the living, because the survivors too fell victim to the Nazis' racial fanaticism. The wall with the name inscriptions is, in many cases, the only place where the name of a family member is actually written down. Here in the picture you can see Tova Baron. In the 15 years of our research, we were able to contact 120 relatives and family members. In many cases, we were able to give the descendants the name of the place where their father or grandfather died. One example, after 72 years, David and Ed Miliband finally learned that their grandfather, David Kozak, was buried at the cemetery of Tailfingen. In October 2017, their daughters, Marian and Hadassah, who were survivors of the Holocaust, visited our memorial site together with the grandsons. Here in the picture, you see David Miliband and Ed Miliband in the next picture. The day will soon come when there will be no more survivors left to visit us. So we try to record their history in movies. In 2014, Johannes Kuhn shot the documentary The Roofer of Birkenau, produced by Vergessen Demokratie. At the opening of the movie in January 2015 and at many more shows in Germany and in Israel, Mordechai Chekhanova was actually there as the protagonist. Also, the participants in a creative summer school workshop organized by the Memorial Organization in cooperation with Aktion Sühnezeichen Friedensdienste, artists addressed the histories of the survivors and the prisoners. They watched the movie The Rufer of Birkenau, for example, and were then tasked with letting the input inspire their artwork. Two participants in the workshop from Russia and Belarus were deeply moved by one scene in particular. Mordecai Chekhanova describes the selection at the ramp in Auschwitz. We got off the train and were unable to stay together for long, maybe just a couple of minutes. Then there was the selection. Men, so this means my father and I, had to go to the one side. I think it was the left side. My mother, with my two sisters, had to go to the other side. We were all crying, but we had to keep going. We weren't allowed to stop. And as I left with my father, I kept turning around to see my mother just this once more, and my little sisters. This is how we left and disappeared. Saying goodbye and being departed from my mother and my sisters was the worst moment of my life. It broke me. It really broke me. Being separated from the own mother and sisters is what Maria Chupina and Ksenia Bislukova turned into stone here. Their sculptures can now be seen on the runway at the former camp. Trees and grass now cover the tarmac, and we are continuing our work to uncover the history of the concentration camp outpost. With projects such as this youth camp, we want to ensure that the concentration camp memorial at Tailfingen will remain to be a living place of commemoration also in the future. We would like to thank the Obermayer Foundation, the family, the Berlin House of Representatives, and all the organizers of this event. We would like to thank all the supporters, the nominators, and in particular Helmut Gabeli, who cannot be here with us today. He's severely ill, and we would like to say hello to him at this point. 5 family members of former concentration camp prisoners from various countries are here today. Thank you for being here. Susan from the Netherlands, Maya from Frankfurt, Jean-Claude Benadou from France, and Stephen Tenenbaum from Newton. Thank you very much for your attention.
Horst Moe? Yes? Bitte? Yes? Horst Moe? Yeah? I'm sorry? I'm talking from Mr. Moe.
Sehr verehrte Jurymitglieder,
Members of the jury, Obermayer family, Mr. Morg, guests. My name is Daniela Tobias, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the families who nominated Mr. Morg for the Obermayer Award. Jewish families and former Jewish families who used to live in Hamm at the Sieg, and to whom Horst Morg has given back part of their history, part of their dignity. Until November 10th, 1938, there were 3 places of worship in Hamm: an evangelical church, a Catholic church, and a big synagogue. When the synagogue was inaugurated in 1894, 100 Jews lived in Hamm, amounting to 7.5% of the population. In the night of November 9th to 10th, 1938, fire was set to the synagogue and it was destroyed. Fellow Jewish citizens were attacked and displaced, ousted. Horst Muck was almost 4 years old when he stood there holding his mother's hand and witnessed how the roof of the synagogue collapsed. His father, who worked for the German railways, told him a few years later that he was hindered at gunpoint to give Jews who were thirsty in the train wagon water. He was hindered from telling this story. As a grown-up, Horst Muck's interest was kindled about local Jewish history. He continued to find blank pages. Jewish members of sports clubs had disappeared from the chronics, and nobody asked about them. He couldn't stop thinking about it, and he took charge of researching and looking into these files. As a self-taught person, he studied several archives, he learned about Judaism, and he made many incidental discoveries in the back rooms and storages. He challenged older citizens, and he was persistent to learn what had happened back then. He contacted first members of Jewish families who wanted to visit their old home. He hosted them, and visitors from Israel, from the US, and he gave them tours of the town and the Jewish cemetery. A lively exchange ensued, and his private archive grew. What was especially close to his heart was maintaining the Jewish cemetery. For 25 years, he took care of the cemetery in person, and he had 2 iron stars of David made for the entrance. Several exhibitions were prepared about the Jewish history of Hamm on the basis of his archive. He was invited to give talks at schools, municipal authorities, association, church. Parts of his collections are now shown at the Hamm Cultural Center, a house that once belonged to the Jewish family David. Horst Muck, however, received as much recognition he received, he also faced hostility and even received death threats. The fact that words can be followed by deeds was shown when the Jewish cemetery was defiled on several occasions. And in one case, a young person was identified as the perpetrator and taken to court. The contact to former Jewish families gives him strength to go on. Meanwhile, fewer native Hamm Jews come to visit, but their grandchildren and children come. They were deeply impressed from Mr. Muck's commitment. You will now hear a message from Varen Ben-Kiki from Antwerp and Mark David from Los Angeles.
I'm thrilled to know of your receiving of the Obermayer German Jewish History Award. For my parents, Michal and Eliyahu Eli Ben-Kiki, who visited you in Hamm an der Sieg. You are a historian and so very kind. For us that came to see you in 2014, you are a hero. Mr. Muck, you show us that history is rewritten by love and care. Lots of love to you, to your family, and to all that are gathered to honor you at the Berlin Parliament. Greetings.
To Mr. Moog and honored guests gathered today, Mr. Moog, thank you. I speak on behalf of my father, Fred David, and my sisters, Debbie and Karen. Mr. Moog, when you and my father were children, you were both witnesses to the burning and destruction of the synagogue of Hamm an der Sieg on Kristallnacht. Soon after that event, my father and his immediate family were fortunate to leave Germany for the United States, although many of their relatives were unable to escape and were ultimately murdered by the Nazis. Years later, you studied the history of the Jewish community of Ham, and you reached out to former residents such as my father. When we visited Ham in 2014, and you and my father met face to face for the first time, it was like a reunion of old friends. You had been corresponding for years. You showed us a letter that my father had written to you years earlier, in which he described in detail his recollections of living through Kristallnacht as a 12-year-old boy. This was in a notebook filled with other correspondence, photos, and documents. And this was just one of many notebooks in your vast archive on the history of the Jewish community of Ham. It was for this reason that we and many others nominated you for the German Jewish History Award, an honor you so richly deserve. Mr. Moog, we thank you for all you have done. Congratulations on your achievements and on the recognition that you've been given here today. And we also thank the Obermayer Foundation for this important award recognizing people such as Mr. Moog. Thank you.
Der Grund, warum ich heute Abend die
The
Präsentation
reason
übernommen
that
habe,
I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Moog is that his daughter fell ill in December, and it wasn't clear for a long time whether he could be here tonight. So we're all the more pleased he is, and we'd like to thank him on behalf of all the families
für seinen Mut,
involved for his courage, his perseverance, and his concern for the fates of Jewish families. Our thanks also go to Dr. Claudia Maria Arndt from the Landjugend and der Sieg Memorial in Windeck-Rossbach and Pastor Holger Banze, who supported us in the nomination.
Foundation for the acknowledgement of the lifetime achievement of Mr. Moog and for their outstanding hospitality during these days. Thank you und vielen Dank für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you very much for your attention.
Brünnhilde Stimme.
Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren,
Ladies and
sehr geehrte
gentlemen,
Familie Obermayer,
members of the Obermayer family, members of the jury. It is an immense honor for me to be presented with the Obermayer Award here today. I am delighted to see that so many members, family members of former members of the Jewish community of Niederzissen are here today, representing the families Berger and Friesen. I am particularly grateful to Mr. Richard Berger, the late Mr. Richard Berger, who died in 1984. His kind answer to my letter in 1979 prompted me and encouraged me to research the history and the past of the Jewish families of Niederzissen. After his death, his sister Carrie became my contact and, as I can say today, a friend of many years. She died last year, aged 101 years. Carrie was able to tell me a lot about what the place we were both born in looked like in earlier times. Their children, Carrie's and Richard's children, Harvey and Evelyn, are here today. I am particularly grateful to Evelyn and her husband David because they took the initiative to nominate me for this award. I would also like to thank my co-author, Brigitte Decker, and also Gerd Fried, who is a supporter of many years. He also helped me author my book about the Jewish cemetery of Niederzissen. I would like to thank also the other members of the Cultural and Local Heritage Society of Niederzissen and the Society of Friends of the Former Synagogue. They sponsored the book, and my particular thanks goes to my partner who's been supporting me all those years. Thank you all very, very much.
Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren,
ladies and gentlemen, members of the Obermayer family and the jury,
to participate in the 2018 Obermayer Awards ceremony on behalf of Brunhilde Stürmer. When my husband David and I learned about the Obermayer Award, we immediately knew in our hearts that Brunhilde should receive this award for all the work she has done with respect to the former Jewish community of Niederzissen and the surrounding area. It was a true labor of love to nominate her for this award. When I was asked to speak about Brunhilde, a torrent of ideas rushed through my mind. One seemed to me the most appropriate. In a Jewish home, a man recites the following poem from the book of Proverbs to his wife on Friday night as they usher in the Sabbath. Eshet chayil mi yimtza, v'rachok mipninim mircha. It means a woman of valor, who can find? She is precious far beyond rubies. Rabot banot asuchayil, va'at lit al kulana. Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. This poem minimizes beauty and elevates kindness, generosity, honor, integrity, and dignity. And it ends, charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Give her honor for the fruit of her hands. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. My mother, Caroline Berger-Levin, the last surviving Jewish resident of Niederzissen at 101, would be so proud today that this moment has come to pass. In her honor and memory, I say thank you, Brunhilde, for keeping alive the flame of memory of the Jewish community of Niederzissen and the surrounding area. Meine Mutter, Caroline Berger-Levin, die letzte Jüdische von Niederzissen, wäre heute so stolz, dass dieser Moment gekommen ist.
My mother, the last surviving Jew of Niederzissen, would be so proud of Brunhilde Stürmer here today. I would like to thank Brunhilde Stürmer for keeping alive the commemoration of the Jewish community of Niederzissen. Thank you.
Guten Abend I would like to first thank the Obermayer Foundation for the very important work it does, and the award recipients for their incredible work and amazing accomplishments. But I would especially like to express my undying love and appreciation to Brunhilde Stürmer for what she has done. She certainly deserves this award. While I have only been in Niedersachsen 4 times in my life, because of Brunhilde, I feel like ich bin eine Niedersachsener. 50 years ago, 50 years ago, President Kennedy said those very important words for Berlin. And it was shortly after that that Brunhilde started her lifelong passion to document the families, the Jewish families of Niedersachsen. At the time, and until this weekend, I thought it was truly the most unusual and unique story of Jewish preservation in Germany. I had no idea what I heard this weekend. There were many Jews in Niedersachsen, and my father and his sister, my Aunt Carrie, were the only survivors, I thought. And it is because of Brunhilde that I now have over 20 relatives all over the world. In fact, I met one this weekend from Israel, Asher Friesen. Brunhilde started in the 1970s when she wrote to my father, Richard Berger, and asked him if he had any pictures. This man, who was so scarred by what had happened, never had any non-Jewish friends. We didn't know non-Jews. We didn't speak to non-Jews. And for some inconceivable reason, he sent her his original photographs. To this day, I don't understand why he sent them to this stranger, this non-Jew. It must have been something he read in the sincerity of her words. For the next 40 years, Brunhilde climbed through attics, dug through archives, climbed into dusty, dirty basements to get to know every Jewish family in Niedersachsen and their descendants, the dead and their descendants. She has introduced family members to me and other family members to them to me we didn't know existed. Now I have a large family. Not only did Brunhilde rehabilitate the cemetery, the Jewish cemetery, but she also absolutely refused, this stubborn, tenacious, gentle, but unstoppable woman refused to let the synagogue become a condo. And she was the one instrumental to have it rehabilitated. But she didn't stop then. With the assistance of Bridget Decker, she wrote an encyclopedic book of all of the Jewish families that lived in Niedersachsen for hundreds of years in peace. Brunhilde has dedicated her life to, and her book single-handedly preserved the memory of our families. My family, which had been wiped off the face of the earth, now has a face, a home, and a voice. With all the hate and intolerance all over the world, Brunhilde and people like her, individual people who refuse to ignore what is wrong and want to make a difference. Brunhilde made others sit up and take notice. This is what she started, and this is what we all so very much need to do. Her work gives us hope that generations to come will live in peace and harmony. On behalf of the entire Berger family, and most importantly, for my daughter Vanessa Berger and all of our other relatives that I did not know exist, and for all the generations that will come in the future, we will be forever grateful to this woman. I love you. Thank you.
Five years ago, the jury established the annual Distinguished Service Award. This is a very special honor. We welcome to the podium Margot Bentheim-Friedlander to receive the award. President Wieland, would you join me also? I would like to read the text of the award, and then I believe you have some words to read to us. Yes?
Thank you.
In recognition of your indomitable spirit and your dedication to youth, inspiring the next generations to be witnesses in remembrance of the Holocaust, you have fulfilled your mother's dying wish to make something of your life.
Thank you very much.
You're very
Yes.
welcome. Yeah. And let's go over here.
Ich wollte wirklich nur ein paar Sätze sagen.
I just want to say a few
Ich denke,
words,
dass Sie doch vielleicht etwas mehr von mir hören wollen.
but I think maybe you want to hear a bit more from me.
Die Worte, die meine Mutter mir
The
hinterlassen
words
hat, an
my
dem
mother
kalten
left me on
Januar
a cold
1943
day in January
waren,
1943
ich gehe
were
mit Ralf,
I will go
wohin auch
with
immer
Ralph,
das sein mag,
wherever that may be.
versuche, dein
You
Leben zu
try
machen.
to make something of your life.
Am Vormittag an diesem Tag wurde mein
On the morning
Bruder,
that day,
und wer immer noch in der Wohnung
My
war,
brother and whoever else was left in
Weder
the flat
meine
was
Mutter
arrested.
noch ich
Neither my
waren
mother
zu der Zeit
nor
im Haus.
myself were at home at that
Als sie
time.
nach Hause kam, war die
When she
Wohnung
returned
versiegelt.
home, the flat was sealed, the door was sealed. Neighbors told her what had happened 1 hour earlier.
Meine Mutter hat bei den
My mother
Nachbarn nicht auf mich gewartet.
did not wait for me
Sie hat
at the
sich
neighbors.
selbst gestellt.
She
ist mit meinem jüngeren Bruder
went to the
gegangen.
police and
Hätte sie
told
auf
them
mich
she wanted to
gewartet,
join
wäre ich
her
mit
son.
ihr gegangen.
Would she have waited for me?
Ich hätte meine Mutter nicht
I would have
allein
joined them.
gelassen.
I wouldn't have let my
Ihre
mother go on her
Worte,
own.
versuche dein Leben zu
Her
machen,
words, try to make
haben
something
mich
of your life,
geleitet.
misguided me,
aber ein Schuldgefühl
but
habe
a
ich
feeling of guilt
das Richtige
remained.
getan,
Did I do
wird
the
mich
right
nie
thing?
verlassen.
This feeling will never go away.
Ich habe wunderbare Menschen gefunden,
I met
die mir
wonderful
geholfen
people who
haben.
helped me.
15 Monate
For
war ich
15 months, I
Menschen,
disappeared.
die ich nicht kannte,
These were people I didn't know before,
die
Germans,
nicht weggesehen haben,
who didn't turn a
die
blind
die
eye,
Zivilcourage hatten,
who had
auch etwas
the
gegen die
civic
Regierung zu tun,
courage
was
to
auch ihren Kopf
speak up against the government.
Aber sie waren
Very
Menschen.
dangerous deed,
Das werde ich nie
but they were
vergessen.
humans, and I will never forget
Ich
that.
bin im April 1944
In April
geschnappt worden
1944,
und
I
durch
was
einen
caught,
glücklichen Zufall
and
im
by a
Juni
stroke of luck,
44
in June
nach
44, I was brought,
deportiert worden.
deported to
Herrn
Theresienstadt.
Friedländer habe ich im Februar 1945
I met
in
Mr.
Theresienstadt
Friedlander in
getroffen.
February
Wir kannten
1945.
uns aus
We
Berlin.
knew each other from
Wie schön
Berlin.
war es,
That was
jemanden zu
wonderful,
treffen,
meeting
den man von
somebody
früher kannte.
who you know from the old
Wir haben
days.
die Befreiung am 8. Mai zusammen
We
erlebt.
were able to experience the liberation on May 8th,
Im Juni
and at the
geheiratet,
camp we
bevor der
married in
letzte
June,
Rabbiner
before the last
Theresienstadt
rabbi
verlassen hat.
left Theresienstadt.
Ein Jahr nach der Befreiung
1 year
sind
after
wir
the
nach
liberation,
Amerika gegangen.
we emigrated
Nach
to the
25
US.
Jahren einer wunderbaren
After
Ehe
25 years
starb mein
of a
Mann
wonderful marriage, my husband
1997.
died in 1997.
Nachdem ich 64 Jahre
After having
in Amerika
lived
gelebt
in the
hatte,
US for
bin ich
64 years,
2010
I
im
returned
Alter
to
von
Germany in
88
2010
Jahren
at the age of 88.
zurück nach Berlin gekommen.
I came back to
meine
Berlin,
Geburtsstadt.
my
Für
native
mich ist
Berlin.
mein Leben eine Mission
For
geworden.
me, my life has
Die
become a
Worte
mission.
meiner Mutter haben mein Leben
The words of my
geprägt.
mother have left a
Ich
mark on my
spreche
life.
seit meiner Rückkehr
Since my
unermüdlich
return,
gegen das Vergessen.
I speak up against
Wir sind alle
oblivion
gleich.
persistently.
Es gibt keine
We are all the
Christen,
same. There is no
oder
Christian,
muslimisches
Muslim,
Blut.
or
Es
Jewish
gibt nur
blood.
menschliches
There's only human blood.
Menschen haben Millionen
People
unschuldige Menschen
have killed
umgebracht,
millions of
weil
innocent
sie
people
ihre Opfer
because
nicht als Menschen
they didn't
gesehen haben.
see their victims as such, as people.
Es ist eure Aufgabe, in Zukunft
It is
dafür
your
zu sorgen,
task
dass
to make sure
niemals Menschen
that
mit so
in the
etwas,
future,
was wir
people
erlebt
will
haben,
never
konfrontiert werden.
have to face what we
Ich reiche
experienced.
euch die Hand und
I'll
bitte
reach
euch,
out to you
ihr sollt die Zeitzeugen
and I ask
sein,
you,
die wir
you
nicht
should
mehr lange
become
sein werden.
contemporary witnesses,
Ich bin
something we
96
cannot be
Jahre.
for a long time to
Wie
come.
lange
I'm
kann ich
96.
es noch machen?
How long can I
Seid
do my job?
Menschen.
Be human.
Heute stehe ich hier
Today I
und
stand here
empfange
before
eine
you
Ehrung.
and
für meine
I receive an award
Dafür
meriting
danke ich
in
meiner
honor of my
geliebten Mutter.
mission, and I'd like to thank my beloved mother for that.
Es ehrt mich sehr, den
I'm truly
Obermayer
honored
Distinguished
to
Service
receive
Award zu
the
erhalten.
Distinguished Service
Im
Award,
Besonderen, weil von jüdischer
especially
Seite aus
because
Amerika kommt.
it comes
Nach
from
der
Jews in
Befreiung
America.
in 1945
After the liberation,
kam ich
1945,
1946 nach Amerika.
I came to the US in
Als
46.
ich, nachdem ich 64 Jahre in Amerika
After having
gelebt
lived
hatte
in the States
und den
for
Entschluss
46 years,
gefasst hatte,
for 64 years,
mit über 88
and
Jahren
after
nach
deciding
Deutschland
to
zurückzugehen,
go back to
traf
Germany
ich von
at an age of
Amerikas Seite
88,
auf große Ablehnung.
I faced a lot of rejection from my fellow American
Award
citizens.
ist die Bestätigung,
This award, however,
dass meine Entscheidung
is the
das
confirmation
Richtige war.
that my decision was the right one.
Ihnen,
So I'd like to thank you all,
liebe Herren und Frau Obermayer,
especially you,
der
Mr.
Obermayer-Familie,
and Miss Obermayer,
Herr Wieland.
Mr. Wieland.
Ich danke euch alle
I would like to thank you
für eure
all
Anerkennung.
for your recognition for this distinction.
Ja, auch nochmal von mir herzlichen Dank
Once
an die
again,
Musik.
also thank you very much to our musicians. Before we proceed to the reception at the casino, I'd like to first of all thank everybody involved. Of course, the staff of the Berlin House of Representatives, everybody who helped. Big thanks to the Obermayer family, the award winners, and whom I'd like to ask to join me here up front for a group picture. Thank you all for coming, and I'd be pleased if we had the chance to talk later at the reception. Thank you.